Hey friends, it's Durosai here to give 4 tips on how to get cleaner mixes. So let's get right into it with tip number 1, and that is to think of the different sounds in your track in terms of both the frequency range they occupy as well as their placement spatially in the mix, both laterally, meaning your left to right stereo image, how well is everything panned, and in terms of depth. You can have certain sounds very up front in your track and others far away as if they're in the distance. You want the different elements in your mix to have breathing room so they can be distinguished and heard clearly. When you have a lot of different sounds playing in the same frequency range, they might tend to overlap and interfere sonically. So what you can do is pan these out separately so you can give them some physical space, or you can set one farther back in the mix. To make something sound far away, you can either put a lot of reverb on it and or attenuate some of the high frequencies, because things in the distance tend to sound a little bit muffled because you're mainly getting that low frequency energy. And when something is close up, you're getting more direct sound and less reverberant sound. That's why a sound source with a lot of reverb on it just tends to sound like it's coming from the back. So tip number 2 is making sure your mix isn't too crowded. Sometimes we tend to get carried away and we're just adding all these sounds, they're playing at the same time, and what happens is, kind of like what I was saying in tip number 1, is that now your sound sources just don't have breathing room and you're not really able to distinguish them. So your mix now just sounds, doesn't sound very clear and it sounds muddy. You don't want too many sounds competing for your attention and for that spotlight. So it's a good idea to space out things in your arrangement so that each individual element can really be focused on and it's not competing with all these other sounds. So now on to tip 3, which is to make sure you are using good sounds. And by good sounds, I really just mean high quality, not overly processed or overly compressed. It's a lot easier to add processing and compression to something that's clean versus removing and reversing processing and compression on an overly compressed sample or some other sound. I always prefer to work with the raw, unprocessed sound source. That way I'm able to add plugins and processing in exactly the way I want to, and I can easily integrate it into my track. It's a lot easier than trying to make something that's heavily processed fit into your track. So lastly, tip number 4 is to tune everything so all the sounds are in key. When things are out of key, you're gonna have dissonance and your mix isn't gonna sound as tight. And don't forget to tune your drums. This could actually make or break a groove. So I know it can be hard sometimes to find the pitch of a drum, especially when so many are atonal. But what I usually do is I'll ride the pitch fader up and down and stop at the point where I think it sounds the best. If it sounds good, it's probably in key. And honestly, if it sounds good, it's good, doesn't matter. But I definitely encourage you to experiment with modifying the pitch of each of the drums just a little bit, at least just to see if it sounds better or not. Because I've found that even one semitone movement sometimes just make a huge difference because you're now just shifting that drum into key. You can also try a frequency shifter, which works a little bit different than just changing the pitch via semitones, because a frequency shifter will just shift all the frequencies uniformly, so you'll get a little bit of a different sound. Well, I hope you enjoyed these tips on how to get a cleaner mix. If you did, leave a like on this video, go make some music, and stay creative, my friends. Peace out.